that case, I'd like to go ahead and call our April 3rd Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. I had two announcements first. Art Dias has resigned from the Planning and Zoning Commission, so I'd like to thank Art for all of his contributions. And as long as I'm up here, I'll remember what we do for one, we got to do for everybody. So, amen, Art, and he did a great job. We're certainly going to miss him and all of his knowledge. He was on the County Planning and Zoning Commission for years before he joined us and really contributed quite a bit to our meetings. So if you see him, please thank him for the time that he spent with us. Also, we will discuss Harvest Green, specifically the amenities under old business later on. If you have any interest in that, just stick around till old and new business at the end of the agenda. And without any further ado, y'all have the minutes from our March 6th meeting. Any changes that need to be made, please let us know. If not, I will entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve. Oh, you want to go?
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
I've got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Any?
Again, I remember I mentioned after the fact of something that a statement that I made that was not mentioned in there, so I didn't know if that needed to be mentioned in there. In the minutes, it was something after we made a comment afterwards, and I noticed that comment was not in the minutes.
Can you give me?
If it's general discussion, it usually would not be.
After we
Usually
voted on it?
After the motion, I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
After we close the vote, we wouldn't add that to the minutes.
Okay.
Okay. In that case, if no more further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, first item on the agenda is a 115211 for C Spire.
Chairman, we got one more, item 3, please.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Appointment of our planning commission secretary. That's important. I don't want to have to keep minutes. Can I have a motion to appoint Cindy as our planning commission secretary?
I'll make a motion to appoint Cindy as our planning commission secretary.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Go ahead and put it all the way down. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Now, item A, UR 2304 and 115211 review.
Yes. And we do have two of these, so I'll go through them pretty quick. These are pretty much standard. The first one is for 1,000 linear feet. This is along Fairhope Avenue. Familiar, that building right there is the Cour Rouge Shopping Center. Cafe 98 on the north-hand side, so that shows you the area where this will be installed. Other than its location and what all is in that, there's nothing unique I want to verify here. Just to always remind folks that we can only handle 750 feet of locates in one given day. They can get those beforehand. Those are good for 21 days, and then do all the work at once. But other than that, we do recommend approval of this, and with the exact same conditions we have for most of these.
All right. Thank you, Hunter. These are not public hearings, but would anybody from the public wish to speak about this item or have any concerns? In that case, I'll go ahead, commissioners.
I'll let you know, I did speak to our right-of-way supervisor about this today, about these first two cases, and he said we were in good shape on everything. He's walked it, and he's met with the contractor on it.
You want to make that into a motion, Aaron?
Sure. I'll make a motion to accept. We're going to do them one at a time, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Let me present the second one, because there's one note on that.
Sure.
But go ahead and
Okay.
make a motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve UR 23.04 with staff recommendations.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve subject to staff recommendations. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. UR 2305.
Same project, same type of project. The area is highlighted on the screen, Magnolia Avenue Summit. And the only noted here is takes some care around Church Street. That's a new street. We just got finished. We don't want it to look horrible on a brand new street. So I think boring there, and there are some trees in the corner of that property. That
There's
are
some,
sensitive.
really significant
Really.
trees at Magnolia and Church on both sides of the street.
John Thomas and any right-of-way permit that comes in for this work, John Thomas and Jamie Rollins with our horticulture department will be involved in monitoring that.
Okay,
So,
well, we'll be watching it.
Yes. Yes. I
That's
won't
my
point
front
out
door.
where but it is very close. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things John said when we were talking about it, one of the benefits to us is we just did that big Church Street project. So they've got real good subsurface plans of what's there. So he actually said the plans that he received from C-Spire on this one were about the most detailed that he's received on a project in a while. So they're aware of it, and I think they're going to stay on it.
Good.
And I believe they are staying on that north side, not on the south
Okay.
side.
Well, there's still some significant trees in the Vance's property right there.
Yes, there are. And we do have a board of adjustment for y'all that's interested. Since we looked at that northeast corner so much, there's a board of adjustment case. I'm not gonna go through the board of adjustment, because it'll probably be in front of it.
Okay.
But same 10 conditions, we do recommend it.
All right, anybody from the public wish to speak to this? And I did have a phone call on this today with the attorney's office along the route saying they really hope it gets passed because their telephone is not very good and they want some improvements. So anyway, most people are happy with these projects. Commissioners, entertain a motion.
I move we approve UR 23.05 with staff recommendations and conditions.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving subject to staff recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, SD 2310, minor subdivision on Morphy and Bishop Road. Yes, sir.
And Mike's out tonight, but he did put a lot of this information together. So this is a simple two-lot subdivision zoning on the left on your screen. So the current property is R1. Both remaining properties have been indicated they will be R1 as well. The mic's not on, so both of these property resulting lots will be R1 as well. The lots as laid out meet our lot minimums, setbacks, square footage, everything included. The lots are within 450 feet of a hydrant. Each lot does have, for Morphe, the flow modeling work for the hydrant. To support this development, there was no infrastructure needed, so it's a minor subdivision. The connectivity was the only thing. They did provide a 15-foot sidewalk easement in addition to the drainage and utility easement. But they did request not to install the sidewalks. That's county planning commission decision. We have the image on the left on the screen shows the gray lines. Those are existing sidewalks. In red is where this property sits. You know, this one's kind of tough in our analysis. It's pretty flat. You know, we've allowed some not to be installed when there's ditches and might need a little bit more engineering to put the site in. It's about 650 feet from the Bishop intersection, but that sidewalk is along the western side of Bishop Road. This would be, I believe, 311 feet to cross this entire property of sidewalk. So that kind of is a decision, I think, for the planning commission to make, whether you want to grant that approval. But other than that, there was no conditions we had, and we do recommend approval of Dome Place minor subdivision, SD 23.10.
Okay. All right, Seth, do you have anything to add at this time?
No, sir, unless y'all have any other questions.
Any questions for the developer at this time? All right, thank you, Seth. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Does anybody wish to speak to this item? All right, in that case, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners?
I have a question for you, Lee. What's the update on single tax possibly having a sidewalk down Morphe?
as far as this section goes,
Because I see where, can't see the slide, but you can see where it stops
right,
over there, just west. I don't know how far that is, if that's,
this is
quarter of a
one
mile.
to me that's just real borderline. When the single tax comes in and builds, the next phase is going to be to go from, connect to Bishop Road, and there's just one little section, but then to go from Bishop to 13.
okay.
And then but that's all going to be on the south side of the road from, I don't think we'll do anything on the north side, but, from Bishop to 13 will be the next, and then hopefully from, 13 all the way on, and complete that. But this is one that just is so borderline. I mean, on the one hand, are you sure it's that many 600 feet from the intersection?
Yes, this is, I'm sorry,
750?
went the other way. So this property is 311, is that right, Seth? Does that sound right? 311, and you can see even the intersection is off the screen here. So it's actually going back to here, how far that is, so 300 feet of, and that's a very rough sketch. That's not a scaled parcel, that's
Yeah.
just me showing a locator.
I mean, that corner piece is zoned R4.
658 feet to our property.
Yeah, he was saying 650, that's what I was thinking, but the corner piece is zoned R4, so at some point you would assume that that would be some kind of a multi-unit,
Mhm.
which you'd certainly like sidewalks along that, and then,
R3
You know,
adjacent surrounding, everything in orange is R3, which is,
Yeah.
y'all know, we do not allow anymore, but it is zoned from back in the day.
but sure be nice to be able to, eventually walk. I mean, how long that property stays R3, whether it stays R3 1 year or 20 years. Sure be nice to be able to walk, to Bishop Road and to the school and other areas. So I'm pretty much on the fence of this one. If it was just a little bit closer, I'd for sure say they ought to build the sidewalks. If it was a little further, no, but this one's just right in that gray zone.
And with the sidewalk coming on the other side of the road, to me, kind of pushes it into a grayer zone, but.
And that same conversations we've had internally. As R1, you don't see too many R1 lots these days. That leans me toward, well, okay, let's not punish for R1. But if that R1 lot came in for a rezoning to match some of the other things around, I would certainly hope, whether that's 5 years from now or 20 years, I hope that zoning request would come with a grant to change, would require the sidewalk, if we choose not to allow it, require it tonight.
Sounds fair.
Okay.
I move that we approve SD 2310 Domes Place minor subdivision.
Second.
Are you subject to staff recommendations?
None.
There aren't any.
Well, don't we need to
Should we
put?
say that
don't-
generally?
I mean, if we don't have a staff recommendation, don't we need to include
That we're accepting the,
we need to include the waiver, don't we?
It's not a waiver. Remember, we changed the subdivision regulations, so that wouldn't require a waiver that had to be
because it's-
advertised. It's just a decision you make, so.
I mean, shouldn't we say subject to getting a sidewalk?
It's
They
already
provided it.
provided. So we do
Oh,
that a lot of
never
times when the
mind.
people don't put it on, but it's already on the plat.
I'm late. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, motion passed unanimously. Next item on the agenda is SD 2311, Myrick Place, right over by the McDonald's, off of Greeno.
Yeah, this is kind of like. Go. There we go. Okay. It's a lot like the previous one that Hunter did. Okay, so the owner is Single Tax and Myrick Enterprises. Seth that's here is authorized agent. The application is for Myrick Place, which is a 3-lot minor subdivision on the north side of Estella Street, west of North Greeno Road, across from the Echo Rouge Shopping Center and the McDonald's. It's zoned B4 Business Professional District, and it's approximately 1.26 acres, and there are already 2 existing buildings. And that's what it looks like. There are the 3. Okay, so all the lots are within 450 feet of a fire hydrant, and they all front Estella Street, and they meet all the minimum requirements. This is a minor, and it didn't have a tree protection plan, landscape plan, and all that are required for a major subdivision, and it all checked out. Just a note that the final plat has to be recorded within 120 days of approval. So the existing flow patterns for drainage are not being changed, and all the utilities are accounted for. So, with sidewalks, there are no sidewalks currently on Estella Street, and there are no sidewalk easements on the adjacent plats either. So you'll see a visual of that in a minute. The closest existing sidewalk is a lot closer, which is 164 feet east on North Greeno Road, and the applicant is requesting not to install the sidewalks at this time. However, the Planning Commission allows for 10-foot sidewalk easement in lieu of installing the sidewalks, and there's actually already a 15-foot utility drainage and sidewalk easement on the plat that crosses all 3 lots. And interesting, the single tax is part owner of the subject property as well as all the other properties along Estella Street on that side between North Ingleside and North Greeno Road. So there's an opportunity to coordinate there. So that's what it looks like. There's no sidewalks, and there's the top is the Echo Rouge Shopping Center plat with no sidewalk easement. Then Estella Place also does not have sidewalk easements. And we do recommend approval of the Myrick Place minor subdivision.
All right, any questions for staff at this time?
For what it's worth, we think there should be sidewalks on this one.
Yeah, how far away
It's
are we
really
from
close. It's
Greeno?
163
I mean, we're-
feet.
That's a pretty
164, I'm
significant
sorry.
sidewalk
And
down
it's
Greeno
business.
Road.
And it's a big sidewalk.
Business.
It's business, it's,
It's going
you
to
got
keep
a
on
big
being
development
business.
lot
Yeah.
across the street, so
No. Well, it's commercial,
yeah.
and it's just one property away.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know how they did that originally without sidewalk.
When I was looking at the plats, I thought that was strange too. Neither one, especially the Echo Rouge, because that was relatively recent.
All right, any questions for staff at this time? All right, anybody here on behalf of the developer? Seth?
Again, I'm Seth Moore. On this one, it is a little bit unique because there are a lot of trees that are between the back of the curb and the parking area for the businesses that are there. And if you had to put in a sidewalk there, you'd be right up against the curb because the trees, you have to cut them down. I know you don't want to cut those down because there are several in the right-of-way heritage trees, you know, over 24 inches, oak trees in that area. I do know the property to the east of this pretty much is all asphalt to that sidewalk. And just wanted to give you that information there.
All right. Any more questions for the developer at this time?
I know the busiest sidewalk in Fairhope is right up to the road from Gambino's to Nelson Drive, and it touches the road too. So that's the busiest sidewalk in town. So I don't think that deters not needing a sidewalk.
Well, they can float it around however they want, you know, move it. It doesn't have to be straight shot. They can go around.
Well, it would definitely be.
Yeah, looks better too.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. All right.
Just want to make sure if we do that, we really don't mind if that goes inside private property since there's an easement, or outside that can meander to get around trees and
Sure.
other stuff, but at the property lines, it needs to at least touch the right-of-way so we can connect to it in the future.
All right.
makes
Anybody,
sense.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Anybody from the public have any questions or concerns about this item? In that case, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners?
I move we approve SD 23.11 Myrick Place minor subdivision with the one recommendation or requirement to add sidewalks.
I've got a motion to approve, subject to adding sidewalks. Do I have a second?
Oh, second.
Got a motion to approve, subject to sidewalks, and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, SD 2312, Washington Square multi-occupancy project.
This is a project that was approved a few years ago before my time. I do want to just clarify, it is advertised because technically it is an 8-unit multiple occupancy project. It is on R5 property, and there was a former plan approved that included 4 buildings with 4 units each, so 16 total units. The map, or the aerial on the right, shows the existing conditions of the site. Since this was originally approved, there's been MOP requirements and green space requirements and other things added. So this is the proposed plan that meets that. It's additional 4 units. That's all that's being built today. His former plan did have 16, so the net reduction of 50% of the originally approved units, adding the green space along the road. The utilities are available. There will be some improvements made, but because that's into some significant utility lines, the city is going to perform that work. Drainage was installed during the construction of the first building and releases in the stormwater system at Bishop. 2 small dry retention ponds are being created with this project to treat the water before releasing into the existing stormwater system, and does conform to the requirements of our subdivision regulations. An O&M plan has been provided and will be recording, holding the owner responsible for routine inspections and maintenance. Green space meets the 20% as required by our subdivision regulations, and the sidewalk is proposed along each side of the private drive. There is a nice fence there that does prohibit it from connecting to the existing sidewalk on Bishop. You know, that's we'll figure out the best way around that, but I don't necessarily want to knock that fence down with a nice rod. So if we've got any conversations on that one, we can have them, but staff does recommend approval of Washington Square MOP with only one condition, just for Eric. Certificates of occupancies for residential shall not be obtained until the final MOP plat has been approved. So I did talk to the applicant today, and they do want to get started with vertical construction as soon as possible, but until until some of that infrastructure's in and it gets recorded, as y'all know, we have the final plat, so MOP plat. So I think everybody's on board with that condition, but happy to discuss or answer any other questions you may have.
Sounds good. Any questions for staff at this time? All right. In that case, anything, George, do you or SE Civil have anything to add at this time?
Thank y'all. Hunter did a great job summarizing this. You know, it was approved a long time ago with 16 units, and we're only going to be adding 4 more for a total of 8. One of the buildings, obviously, is where the green space has to go now. Being that the sidewalks are along Bishop are already installed, and that we can't really interconnect without tearing down the nice new fence, we're hoping that we can non-install the sidewalks within the private development, as was the original approved plan. So I wanted to ask y'all for your consideration on that. And other than that, I'm here for any other questions that you might have.
What is that asphalt? Why is there a road in between the two units?
There's a existing transformer that serves the existing building, and that was one of the utility comments. Typically, they want a paved access point to the transformer. So that was one of the last comments we got from the utility department.
That's a shame.
Yeah, they have a requirement, I believe, 10 feet.
Yeah.
It has to be a paved surface within 10 feet of a transformer. If we were designing where the transformer would be today, it probably wouldn't be behind that building.
Yeah.
But because that's existing, it's,
We would not object to the utility department pulling that transformer up closer if they want to. Because I agree, but we tried to make the minimum width we could possibly get to that transformer, but it does look kind of odd, and I have a feeling it's going to become a parking spot for somebody.
Mhm. Private drive.
So if you'd like to add another condition that if the utility department moves the transformer, we can not put in that little side drive, that'd be great.
Yeah.
or would another, I mean, we have different types of surface that may support vehicles. I mean, if that can be explored,
Yeah, could you do grass pave? Because you can drive a fire truck on grass pave.
We can definitely explore it. They just said a paved surface, and so that's,
That's you showed a pic,
Yeah.
yeah.
We
I mean-
can talk to them because and I don't know if they'll do it or not, but typically it's a weight-bearing surface and they have a
Yeah.
certain amount of weight.
So
And
it's just the
we've got
base
gas-
underneath it, yeah.
Well, and we've got grass pavers with the honeycomb pattern where we've got grass coming up and it looks a lot better.
All right, thank you, Larry. I'll go ahead and open the public, is this a public hearing?
It is.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Yes, sir. If you'll state your name and your address for our secretary, please.
Hello, my name is Mike Ball. My wife and I own the property at 56 Hoffman, which backs up to the development. There's two lots, actually two houses on Hoffman Drive that back up to the space where this new building is going to be built. Absolutely fine, looks great. The other buildings are great, no problem whatsoever with the development except for one thing. And I had mentioned this to the developers during the, I think you call it, community meeting a few weeks ago. And I didn't receive a confirmation then, and I was hoping I could receive a confirmation tonight. There'd be some type of barrier. Right now, there's really nothing between the back of my house and the back of this building, which is, even though I'm sure it meets the setbacks, it's pretty close. It's very close to the back of, to the shared property line. I've had a fence, I've had tall Leland cypresses in the past, all lost in hurricanes and so on. I've got some small plantings now that in many years would be high enough to block it, but the developer, when building the original building, seemed to have built a fence to the end of the buildings that are there now. I was just asking if they commit to build a fence all the way, at least to my neighbor's property line, which ironically has 10, 12, 15-foot trees there that block their view of this property. Or in the absence of a fence, maybe an equal size berm of plantings that would block the view. So otherwise, looking right out at it. I don't live in that house, in full disclosure, but I have owned the house for many years, and I've rented it to a lady for several years, and I want to take care of her.
Sure. Just FYI, if it's not in the regulations, we can't require that he do that. We can ask, and on his discretion, he can do that and protect his view as well as you can, do it and protect yours.
Well, I was
But-
told
but
in the
he's here and
community
he
meeting
hears
that there
it.
was a landscape plan that would likely more than adequately satisfy my concerns. I was just wondering, do you have that landscape plan? Has that been approved, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's part of the approval process.
And y'all forgive me, Mike reviewed this one, that's a detail that I don't know the answer to, but I'm sure Larry does, so we can get some
Yeah.
clarification.
Yeah, I'll see at the end of the public hearing, I'll call Larry back up and he can describe what they're planning on doing.
Okay, thank you.
To that. Thank you, yes, sir. Anybody else wish to speak to this item? All right. Thank you. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time in that case. Larry, can you discuss whatever plans y'all have as far as the rear landscaping on that building?
I was curious about the landscaping for the green space too.
So right now, the landscape plan meets the minimum requirements. would it create a visual barrier? No, the existing landscape plan doesn't create a visual barrier between the two properties. As far as the existing green space, it's still stay as it is today. There's one tree in there, and then it's just a big open grassed field, basically, and that's all the intent for it.
Can I ask a clarifying question? I couldn't understand. You say it does or does not block?
It does not.
Well, in our meeting with you, in the community meeting out of your office, you said that it would. The developer himself said, he said, I am confident that our landscape plan, which is very demanding by the city, will meet your satisfaction.
That's not actually what we said. We said there will be a landscape plan that will address any buffering requirements.
I was the only person there. I was keenly focused.
All right,
That
thank
is
you.
what was said by the developer.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, go or no go, I'll live with the results, but that is what it said. That's my opinion.
Right.
And I shared with them then that I would be at this meeting.
Thank you, sir.
because of this,
All right, commissioners? Any further questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
The only question I've got, Larry, do we have a landscape plan? I know I don't have building permit information in yet, so I haven't seen a set of plans. So we have one, and it's been reviewed. I don't recall looking at it. You're going to forgive me, Hunter, when we were doing the review.
Same. I do not remember looking at the landscape plan. I know this was a good conversation. If Mike was here, I know he would. And I guess, is it even feasible with the detention to plant anything on that small slope? Would it work?
There's some,
His property is not where the
Yeah.
detention pond goes. If you'll scroll, can I do
Yeah.
it?
do you,
His
It's gonna
property
be
is
directly-
right there.
It's directly north of
Yeah,
the
his-
north building on the property.
so just to clarify, so the original MOP didn't have any buffering requirements?
There was no MOP back
There
then.
was no
Back in the-
MOP
It's
back
been there a
then.
long time.
Okay.
And residential against residential is not a, requirement.
Even with different
for-
densities?
Yeah.
Basically, you got 2 units in front of 2 units. And we don't have any requirements. If he wants to do what he can, we don't have any requirements. I mean, it's, requiring him to do it more just because, the other was first and he's second. The other can build a fence as easy as he can build a fence. I mean, they both got their private property rights. I mean, if we had, I'm just saying, we don't have any authority to require anything more than, what our subdivision regs and MOP requirements are.
I was just following through on what I was told.
I understand.
The property owners from the street out to our property today, they have fences like I used to have a fence.
Right.
The developer has their own fence, so literally fences that back up to each other.
Sure.
All the way down until you get to the point.
Sure.
And I was assuming when they built, was that no problem with the development? It's nice, it was nice then, has been, will be nice now, I'm sure. But I just asked them a simple question, since you already have a fence that you started at that point, and you continue it until it closes off
Let's see.
the view, they said they were sure I would be satisfied with the plan,
I understand.
and that's why.
Yeah, thank you. All right, commissioners, I will entertain a motion if there are no further questions or concerns.
I'll make a motion that we approve SD 23.12 with staff recommendations, which I think are none.
I've got a motion to approve subject to staff recommendations. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is
Encounter Development Commercial and Retail Center.
SD 23.14. Encounter Development. This is out on the northeastern side, northeastern intersection of 104 and Highway 181.
You got it. So this is for preliminary plat approval for a 13-lot major subdivision. The entire property is 35.16 acres. It's zoned B2 General Business District. The largest lot is 16.05 acres, and the smallest lot is almost 1 acre. It also has common area that consists of almost an acre as well. So there you are. There's the general layout, and you can see the 13 lots. Okay, so it's a commercial retail center that requires new roads and infrastructure. There are 12 lots will be developed in the initial phase. The largest lot is Lot 13, and it will be developed during a future phase. Lot 1 is the only lot that we are aware of that has a tenant and site plan at this time, and every lot will require a mandatory site plan review. And they made a note on the plat already that says that. So it connects to the previously approved Rockwell Place to the north via Bushel Drive, which is intended to...
Can we pause for just one
Yeah.
second? Hunter, I see the applicant from the last item was walking back and asking about the sidewalk. We weren't clear about that one way or the other in
Washington.
Washington Square. Does that mean that the sidewalk is included? And if so, I just want to make sure that was, since Chris, our attorney's not here, I just want to make sure that was the intent of the motion.
We've already started this one. If we finish this one before we get to the next agenda item, let's discuss that. If we need to open it back up,
Okay,
just to clarify that point, we can.
that'll be fine. Great,
Okay.
thank you, Hunter. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So like I was saying, the subdivision connects to the previously approved Rockwell Place and via Bushel Drive, which will ultimately be City of Fairhope public maintained street. So the applicant has provided sidewalks as well as a multi-use trail throughout the property. And it's nice because the multi-use trail is off the major roads, so that's nice. Each individual lot in its site plan review shall design and construct internal sidewalks that will connect to the sidewalks that are platted and or the multi-use trail. Okay, so all connections and work in the ALDOT right-of-way will require permitting from ALDOT. Jade has met with Fairhope Public Works and the Fairhope Utilities and discussed alternative sanitary network routes, and it's our understanding that they are currently revising a utility plan based on that meeting. They were given options. Jade chose an option. Trey's here. He can talk about it. The water is provided by the City of Fairhope, as well as the sewer. They have a caveat: the final construction plan shall be approved by the Fairhope Water Sewer Superintendent, including potential aid to construction costs, and all materials shall meet the current version of the City of Fairhope standard specifications for constructing sanitary sewer facilities and water facilities. So power is Riviera, gas is Fairhope, and telecommunications is AT&T. Okay, there was a very robust traffic study done. It's almost 300 pages. And we all know that ALDOT is currently improving Alabama Highway 181. All 4 lanes are open, kind of. But so there was extensive study that was completed that included traffic studies from the publics and also the Rockwell development. And this is out of the traffic study. Quote, based on anticipated traffic volumes, an eastbound left turn lane on Alabama Highway 104 onto Driveway 1, a westbound right turn lane on Alabama Highway 104 onto Driveway 2, and a northbound right turn lane on Alabama Highway 181 onto Driveway 3 are warranted. So that translates to Bushel Drive, Hidden Glen Drive, and Encounter Drive in this project. So the Rockwell study determined that there should be a traffic signal installed at the Alabama Highway 181 entrance to the Rockwell development. And there, as we know, is an existing one on 104 and 181. So this just in.
So we're going to tag you. Yeah. So we did have a note in there on what the traffic study was, and as most of you know, I'll just repeat, a traffic study is not an exact science, and it's not a go or no-go for a project. It's about what improvements should be done. And for the most part, any improvements to 104, 181 are included in this project. There is a permit from the property to the north in ALDOT right now to install the traffic signal. There could be a potential threshold where this builds out faster. I don't think that's likely. That one has a condition. They can't even occupy the building until that's installed. So I think everybody's moving in that direction. It's also a guess in the traffic study about what uses are going to be out here. So they basically said 3 fast food places, a car wash, and some apartment homes, 100 apartment homes. that generates 12,752 trips. That's likely not how this develops. Since that traffic study, this creates a few more lots, so it could be other businesses, and it's hard for that exact science. Now, the internal drive will be a city road. So while there's not likely to be any improvements on 181 or 104, there could be on the city's road. So how we've addressed this right now is we've already said every site out here will have a mandatory site plan review. So what we would like included with that application is the exact trips generated. It's just a layer that we can kind of cumulatively look at, make sure we're not hitting any thresholds that we need to be looking further on improvements for our roads. Think that's a simple solution that we just can't figure out right now. But I'm going to turn the mic back over to Michelle.
Okay. So the site drains in a single primary direction, west to east, into an upper tributary of the Pensacola Branch. The project stormwater runoff is designed to be collected by a series of inlets that's routed via a storm pipe network to a single wet detention pond, which is located on the largest parcel, which is lot 13. So if and when lot 13 has a development plan, the stormwater management system will need to be updated. Lower impact development methods are suggested to control the runoff characteristics. The stormwater management system regulates the post-development runoff release rates below its respective pre-development rates, which is required by the city of Fairhope. So there is perimeter landscaping. It's provided along both highways. The wet detention pond also has trees planted around it. And the applicant has provided an email from AlDOT, where AlDOT has approved green space within the Highway 181 construction setback area, which is different, but we're excited to have that. So the said email is in the packet. And the city horticulturist has approved the tree preservation plan and the landscape planting plan. And there's an example of it. Okay, so more about landscaping. This one's unique because it has that property up to the north in its county. So the project provides a buffer adjacent to the residential property to the east, but a portion of the lot to the north was recently zoned high-density residential by the county. So we, the city of Fairhope, require a 10-foot landscape buffer between the incompatible land uses. And the tree ordinance goes on to say any commercial project or multifamily development adjacent to or abutting a residential zoning district, a buffer strip along the incompatible property lines of developing property is required. So we interpret that to mean a 10-foot landscape buffer in that yellow area by the brownish one.
We've never had to really address
Yeah,
that
it's
because
an anomaly.
zoned a lot, so it's residentially zoned by the county. It doesn't clarify who's zoning, so.
Something noodle. Okay, so at the request of the city, the applicant did put 12-foot wide multi-use trail throughout the subject property, as well as sidewalks that will keep pedestrians off the major state highways, which is nice. So, staff does recommend approval with the following conditions. As we noted in the staff report, the revised utility plan shall be approved by the City of Fairhope Water Sewer Superintendent prior to issuance of a construction permit. And the revised drainage plan shall be approved by the City of Fairhope Public Works Director prior to issuance of a construction permit. Provide the required buffer strip adjacent to the north property, which is that 10-foot yellow one we just talked about. And then each lot shall require a mandatory site plan review, which is a note on the plat already. And then the projected trip generation shall be provided for each use with the site plan review application so we can keep up with those cumulative amounts.
And since the staff report's in, we've already received the revised drainage and utility plans. There's no harm keeping those because they're still going to finalize the review of those plans before we
Right.
see a permit.
Okay. Any further questions for staff at this time?
Who would approve those mandatory site plan? Who would do the actual review of
Ultimately,
those?
the city council, but you'll review those and make a recommendation to the city council
Okay,
as for any site plan review.
okay, gotcha.
Thank you, Michelle. Anybody want to speak on behalf of the developer? Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Trey Generate J Consulting, here on behalf of the applicant. The 4 conditions that are listed before you, we are in agreement with those. As Hunter said, we've already submitted the revised draft documents to the city utility department for the sewer revisions, and so those are just getting processed at the moment. So we should be all good to go on those.
I have one question. The water goes to Pensacola Branch, not Cowpen Creek.
That's great. I believe it's Pensacola Branch. I don't have it on, I only do about 100 of these things a month, so.
I wish Art was here because he was really familiar with this
Well, I
piece
mean,
of
that,
property.
just to the east, River Mill in that area, there's that big, flow that goes to Cowpen Creek right there. And I just didn't see how the water would get around that without being Cowpen Creek.
Well, it looks like it drains immediately into a pond, like right on the other side of that, the property line.
Yeah, it's listed specifically in my report of where it's going. We've mapped it all the way down to Mobile Bay.
Underneath
I
the
just
north, south, east, west.
don't
That
specifically
goes
remember
straight
right off the top of my head which one it's
Yeah.
going to. I know the project to the east of this one went down to Pensacola Branch, but that was, there's another ridge between this one and that one. I don't remember where they connect at.
Okay. All right. Any further questions for the developer at this time?
What's going on Site 1? Do we know?
Site one, we've submitted an application to the city for the Wawa.
Okay, yep.
Yes, sir.
What is it?
A Wawa.
Another destination convenience store. Convenience store that you'll see next month.
You'll see next month.
They're all over the East Coast.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So, I mean,
I
this
understand
is-
that it's Pensacola, excuse me.
I hope this is just an obvious question, but so that all of the infrastructure, including the stormwater, will be constructed with that first?
It's being constructed with this
First.
project.
Yes.
So-
Before,
A couple of minor exceptions, there's some, all sidewalks and connectivities there, but there'll be some additional. And then likely, in the big lot, there'll be some more drainage.
Yeah,
I mean, just to clear, and the reason I'm asking is obviously because it wants to drain that way and to make sure that it's fully catching everything
yeah,
that's
so
coming through.
the entire 13 lot development is under a master stormwater management plan. And so, yes, it's all going that direction. It's all being installed day one.
Okay.
But we have preemptively taken into some considerations that I want some flexibility in lot 13. If we get an opportunity to do something cool with some staggering lakes or something through there. So we've kind of got a little bit of a wiggle room in there so that we can move stuff around and get a little creative with it, is what the intent would be on lot 13.
Okay.
Like I say,
As long as it stays grass field, it works,
Right.
right?
Well, it works now as it's developed. I mean, we've got it set up to work. I just,
So that outfall, it's just detaining and then releasing? The outfall, I'm sorry, in the northeast corner that's immediately adjacent to the neighbor's pond?
well, we're putting in a wet pond ourselves. That's what we're designing.
So, but on the northeast corner of the wet pond, there's is that an outfall structure?
It is.
So
But it
is,
goes into, right, ditch runs directly south. on
Well,
your
there's a ditch running down the tree line, down the east line, and then all of it discharges out towards the northeast. So the water
we're-
coming off of 104, the water coming off of our site, and then the water coming off the property to the north all convene just to the east of us.
okay.
I thought you did a nice job drawing this, Trey. If you did, I liked the pedestrian connection and that.
Yeah,
That,
this one is something
wide
I will point
multi-use
out, Hunter brought
walkway,
it
I thought
up,
was
and I
very
think
nice.
it's a great idea. Golf carts have gotten where they're pretty popular in the area, but out here in this area, there's no real way to get around, and so this project will have the first 12-foot trail, so that'll be a north-south connector, and so, the idea is projects developed in the area that it'll be extended, and so you could actually take a golf cart, and travel up outside the highway, and so that was the thought. It was one of Hunter's ideas, and I thought it was a great
I think
idea.
it'd be great, especially when, you see the traffic. If Art was here, he'd be, talking about the traffic at that intersection. That's about his
Yeah.
least favorite. The more you can keep people out of that intersection, the better you're doing.
Well, and I sometimes we bring this idea up, and it was kind of included in concept in the two properties to the north, but not quite the detail of, this, some were, I can't remember if it was a mulch path or, something 8 foot, This really accommodates the idea of a multi-use trail, so maybe we can get that at least through the commercial property to the north as well.
Great. All right. I'll go ahead, thank you, Trey. I'll go ahead and open the, if you'll stay up front, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Does anybody wish to speak to this item, Encounter Development Commercial Retail Center on the northeast corner of 181 and 104? All right, in that case, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it over to commissioners.
Trey, sorry to surprise, I did have one other question. It's something we talked about. Did y'all get a chance to look at the ingress egress limits on the Bushel Drive at all? Yeah, we had, kind of connectivity. Sorry.
You're talking about, we're looking at,
I can bring it for reference.
so what we're gonna do is, what Hunter's referring to is, we're looking at kind of I don't want to use the word master plan, but we want to look at opportunities to limit the number of curb cuts on Bushel Drive as it comes down through there. And so the developer has agreed to work with the city and try to combine driveways between lots where possible. So depending on what the actual use may be in there, one place may have 2 driveways, but then there may be an opportunity, say, lots 6 and 7 share a driveway. And so we're going to share those driveways to try to limit the curb cuts in there. So just that we just don't arbitrarily have a curb cut on every lot. And where uses are compatible, we're going to have that as being joint parking and shared parking. And so that's something that we're aware of, and that's something we're going to work to, and the developers agreed to that. And so I'm able to say that to you for the record tonight.
And we didn't want to make conditions on that because it's hard to define and leave some flexibility, but that's kind of the intent of, so appreciate it, Trey.
Okay.
And the developer, Bill. I know y'all talked about that, so I appreciate your agreeance with those concerns.
All right, commissioners, any more questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve SD 2314 with staff recommendations, which are 3.
We did
4.
add one, sorry, we did add the one in red.
Oh, yeah,
for,
that's just not.
the trip generation and site plan.
The 4 staff recommendations.
Okay, I have a motion to approve, subject to the 4 staff recommendations on the screen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further?
So we have received the revised utility plans, and Jason signed off on those. We have received the drainage plans, and Richard signed off on those to this point.
They will by permit.
By
I don't know if
permit,
they've
okay.
had a chance. I know they've received the
received them.
plans.
Okay.
And big picture, they're happy.
Okay.
You know, have they got down and looked at every invert and, you know?
Sure.
I don't,
No, no,
I don't know.
that's
I
fine.
just can't answer that right.
Understood, but they have them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Any more further discussion? In that case, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Let's back up to SD 2312. The motion, I assume, would require the sidewalk be built. And just like to ask, was that your intent?
Yeah, it just wasn't in staff recommendations. In my sheet, I was
So-
going by my sheet.
So they were wondering if it had to
And
connect. 'cause
forgive
they were
me,
hitting the-
so I think that was a request. I don't know if Mike knew that. It wasn't in the report. So I don't know if that was a request that was made before tonight.
No, it was just tonight.
Okay. So, you heard the request. It is a private road. It's a road that has not been named until today, or in recent times with this, along with this application prompted, it needed a private street, address. We don't allow private streets anymore,
So
but,
private road, utility vehicle, trash pickup is not.
the trash will still, go on the road just like it has been. So, there's the picture. I mean, what the sidewalks within the property for 8 units, matter? Maybe one side of the road? I don't know if the other side of the road looks like this. I'm not sure how you get that sidewalk out into and connect to this sidewalk without tearing that fence down.
Well, the only other way is going to be to actually swing them into the street.
Swing it in.
It's the only way. I mean.
You just
it's the
take
only
a
way.
section of
Take
that.
that,
Couldn't you
that
just cut a
scrub out and
section?
do maybe a little paver or gravel or something
You
creative.
just cut a section of that, Britt, couldn't you, George?
Do what, Lee?
You could just cut a section of that brick and take a
I
section.
didn't hear you. Do what?
I was saying you could just take a section of that out, couldn't you, on that wall?
Leave the column and.
Yeah, I could.
You just don't want to.
I don't want to.
You don't think it'd be nice?
I have a building on that north side that is existing.
Uh-huh.
And mailboxes there, landscaping there. I'm gonna tear that up, put a sidewalk on that north side. I might put it on the south side where the green area is. That's a private road going in there. You can walk across the street, get on the sidewalk and go where you wanna go. But to put a sidewalk on both sides of that, and, it might end up being a gated community where you can't get in it. So, I mean, it's private. And you got a sidewalk in the front of it.
So you don't want a sidewalk on either side or just on the south side?
I don't want a sidewalk on the north side.
Okay, but you don't mind one on the south side?
I will build it on the south side.
Okay.
After construction is completed, not prior to. Because you tear it up, I mean, it's crazy to put it in.
Okay. That seems fair enough.
Wait.
So I need to amend
But-
my,
So if you want to amend, yes, we need to open that back up. But there's also another issue that you brought up. We expect that to be installed at
Before.
final plat. So,
By final plat,
yes,
which would be, the other condition was no CO until final plat.
that's right. So
Okay.
they can get some vertical construction underway without putting the sidewalk in. We're not creating lots.
Sure,
But the sidewalk would have to be in for CO, basically.
yeah.
But
everybody
Goes
else
without saying.
agrees to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, the other
Yeah.
thing, that sidewalk would not have to meet ADA because it's private, it's not a public right-of-way.
That's
So
right.
there's no ADA requirement
Well,
for
I
that
would make it
sidewalk.
AEA.
Sure,
That's
I
just
understand.
flat as a
Sure.
pancake out
No,
there. Why
understood.
wouldn't you do that? So.
Okay.
Okay. So how do we, Chris is not here, how do we,
I would open up the public hearing just out of
Okay.
caution, just to make sure, open the case back up.
All right.
Reopen the public
I'm
hearing.
going to, just for clarity, for the sake of clarity, I'd like to reopen the public hearing for SD 2312. That's the Washington Square, 4 units going from 4 to 8. There was some question as to whether or not sidewalks would be needed to be built on both sides of the road. The applicant has requested just on the south side, since the north side is already established and would be problematic. Does anybody wish to speak to this item from the public? In that case, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And commissioners, I'll ask for a motion.
Okay, I make a motion that SD 2312, that we approve with staff recommendations of approving a sidewalk on the south side of the development connecting to Bishop Road.
With the condition as staff recommended
With the condition of staff recommendation.
for the certificate of occupancy.
Well,
And,
Well, I
That goes
think y'all-
without saying.
y'all's,
It's
y'all's
already-
is, that's already part of it.
Yeah,
okay, so you're amending your previous motion?
yeah, amend the previous motion to include a sidewalk on the south side. Do I have a second?
Be perfect.
Second.
All right, motion and
Unanimously
a,
seconded.
you can choose from anybody you want, basically, except. In that case, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Thank you.
All right, motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you. Under older new business, first item on the agenda is SD 2118, Estates of the Verandas, the request of the applicant for a 2-year preliminary plat approval extension. Traditionally, we will extend for 2 years, but traditionally, we do it 1 year at a time. I don't think we've ever done a 2-year extension, and I would feel much more comfortable with the 1 year personally, since that's what we've always done. Any, any concerns or comments on that? Do you have an issue with that? I just kind of, with the ghost of art down there, what we do for one, we do for the other. And traditionally, we extend one, we extend another year as long as work has been done on the project.
Right.
If no work's been done, then all bets are off, so. All right, in that case, I'll accept a motion if anybody so cares.
I'll make a motion that we extend, provide the applicant a one-year extension of preliminary plat.
I have a motion to approve one-year extension. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Next item under old business, SD 2304, clump PUD discussion. Is that you, Hunter?
That's me. And we kind of put this on in case there were questions. I don't believe there are any. Scott Hutchinson's here for the applicant. And just got the nod that we really don't have anything to discuss. There's some, I think, wetlands things, and the one thing I will mention is in this project that you've seen 3 times for a zoning change, is once for a preliminary plat approval. It's coming back, hopefully will be in front of you next month. And I just want to, mention there's a constructed wetlands and a detention pond used interchangeably, which is an okay thing, but they kind of have 2 maintenance items. As long as one you want to kind of clean out, and the other you want to leave alone. So we do in our subdivision regulations, it's not a requirement, it's a recommendation under the LID techniques to provide a forebay when you're putting in a constructed wetlands. We haven't seen that yet, but at least an area where you can get the sediment out of the way and clean it. So I hope we see that next month.
You'd have to have some kind of a pre-catch basin if you're using
Yeah.
a wetland for your water retention, I would think.
It's a big conflict if you're saying this is what we're setting aside to kind of preserve, but we're also going to use it. It actually, even our regulations acknowledge that it's, a good treatment source and flow attenuation, everything else. So that's not a problem. It's just how do you maintain those 2 things, and a maintenance plan that's very unique for that type project. It's not the typical checklist of a detention pond. It's how both of those components work together and are maintained by what would likely be a group of property owners in the future.
Yeah, you don't want to go scrape out all the wetland plants every few
That's right.
years. And
Exactly.
gotta turn it back into a ditch.
Yeah. But other than that, we don't really have anything to discuss.
All right, then, last item that I have for old business, / new business is Harvest Green amenities discussion.
Yep. I'm gonna let these guys have at it. We I think Holly or Rebecca, y'all inadvertently brought this up a month early last month. I can't.
With
I-
Overland.
Amenities,
Amenities.
yes. So when they're installed.
When installed and before, at the end,
Yes.
who's checking on them?
So staff's stance has been, they're installed within the phase that's
they
being
serve?
presented. There's some questions about what amenities, and I will lead with saying some of the vertical construction offers problems before final plat. But let Larry tee it up.
Nope.
Time's run out. Sorry, Larry. Go home.
All right, as Hunter was saying, we kind of started getting into this last month, and we'd already had several conversations because of previous projects and where amenities were thought they were going to be coming in. We decided we better tackle this ahead of time. And so just kind of give everybody a refresher. I think everyone except for maybe Eric was on the planning commission when this was approved, but I'm sure he's seen enough of it. But basically, this is divided into Harvest Green West and Harvest Green East. We have a total site acreage of 193 acres, a total of 375 lots with a density of 1.94 units per acre. We have almost 50 acres of green space, and the lot sizes range between 52 to 100 foot wide. Phase 1 of each development is currently under construction. This is kind of a blow up of Harvest Green West, and I won't go through all the details, but it's still under 2 units per acre. This side has almost 20 acres of green space, and the lot ranges are 56 to 100 feet. This is the amenity package for Harvest Green West that's going to be installed. It has a pool, playground, pavilion, restrooms, CBUs of the mailbox units, basketball court, open recreation area, and community trails. Attached is the preliminary plat that we submitted and got approved for Harvest Green West. We include this just as a kind of caveat because as Hunter and I were talking and other people in the development team were talking with Hunter, one of the concerns was, well, what was on the approved plat? We didn't physically show the amenities on the plat, so that's kind of why we showed this here. There was a comment during the review process of both west and east that the amenities needed to be constructed with phase 1. We responded to that comment saying we request them to be constructed within 12 months. And we didn't really ever hear anything. It wasn't a condition, so we just assumed that's where we were going. But here we go assuming, and that's why we're here today, because we want to make sure that when we're coming ready to get our final plat approved, that there's no question as to where we stand on everything. This is more of the phase 2 plat for the west side. Harvest Green East, 110 acres, 227 lots. This one's got a total density of just over 2 units per acre. It's 2.06. Total green space, 30 acres, and lot ranges between 52 to 75 feet. This is the amenity package for Harvest Green East. It has a pool, playground, pavilion, restrooms, mailbox units, pond, and open recreation area and community trail system going through the development. Again, here's the plat for the different phases. Here's a summary of the different amenities, and we're just requesting, for clarity's sake, that we would be allowed to have the amenities completed 12 months after final plat of phase 1 for each of the respective communities. That's all I have.
Sure. Are you asking us to say anything on this, Hunter, or?
This is their question, so if I can help facilitate.
Yeah, I mean, from a 30,000-foot perspective, forget about Harvest Green specifically, and get up to kind of 30,000 feet where we're not looking at the trees, we're kind of looking at the forest. You know, my personal belief is if the amenities have to do with our approval, that we ought to, require them to be done or bonded just like a landscape would or what have you. With that said, I always want to be a little bit careful about having the amenities be part of the overall decision because, golf courses, swimming pools, tennis courts can all be sold, closed down, shut down by owners association vote. So, we don't have any say over that one way or the other. But in this case, what specifically are you asking us for?
So when we were coming to Hunter for clarity on what was going to be expected, he said ultimately that, it's up to the planning commission. He can't say yes or no.
Well, what is up to the planning commission?
Well, so sometimes I think the words that go back and forth, when we said
You got to dumb it down for me.
when all amenities shall be required in that phase, that wasn't a question or a debate. That was just clarity on. And I think they did send back a request. They request 12 months. Well, that was the preliminary plat. We don't have a mechanism for that. We don't bond amenities. That's not something the city builds. We don't build swimming pools or things like that. We bond sidewalk, street trees, things that we know how to do. If it goes haywire and somebody goes away, we can facilitate that. So that's where I think the confusion came in. So I think the request is can they make these improvements a year after final plat? And I can't say that for clarity's sake. I think
to be clear, they're not waiting to get started. They're already starting on some of these amenities out there. There's just no physical way to finish them until the water system's been approved, fire access is there. And so this was kind of what led into that conversation last week is they can only go so far and they have to put the brakes on. And so there's no way to truly have all the amenities completed and at the time of final plat. And so we just wanted to have this discussion because we brought it up when we had our DRC meeting, because that's the first time I believe that it was probably talked about. And we said, well, we won't have fire access necessarily. We definitely won't have an approved water system for fire protection. Just items like that.
But you could have a basketball court, an open recreation area, community trail, I would hate to sort of blanket everything when there's lots of things that could be done.
And that was kind of, there's a lot of logic to this. When you're talking about restrooms and you don't
Yeah.
have approved water lines that are turned over, it's hard to turn that on. When you're talking about occupiable spaces that may require fire protection, they can't get that done. And that's kind of was my logic
The
as well.
trails and
like-
green space.
I support that, but
I think things like green spaces and trails and those things, sidewalks, are pretty much part of the landscape and things that we would absolutely
and
require.
I think basketball court, and I look back at
I
older
think,
ones.
you know,
Firethorn was the same developer, and they put all the baseball fields and all that on the front end.
Because my question is, if we're going to require, as a part of approval, these improvements, we probably need to have them bonded, whether the city likes it or not, and just hire a random builder to finish it if it goes through, if that's part of it. But then we don't have any type of mechanism to say the swimming pool is going to be there forever. We're not putting deed restrictions on every single lot, saying this lot cannot be sold if there's no longer a swimming pool.
Sure,
with the-
it is,
with the
it's
POA.
common area, it is a restriction.
Well,
It's not
but it's a common area, but they could fill the pool in tomorrow. I'm just saying that the POA doesn't
I would
wanna
disagree
maintain
with
it.
that because it's in the public minutes about what the amenities are gonna be.
Well, and that
But that's a
changes,
bigger.
though. I mean,
No, but I'm saying then what do you do? Go in there and say, sorry, POA, you can't, you gotta take the concrete out of the swimming pool, or you've gotta rebuild the swimming pool that you just dug up. I just don't,
And that kind of stuff happens. I mean, we just had one that actually sold a tennis court to the city, you know.
Right.
So things happen, but just to say they can just go do it, I'm not comfortable with that. When it's presented to accommodate the green space, that's part of the component.
Well, we've already issued a building permit for the pool house and the restrooms on Harvest Green West. We hadn't received anything on East yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we issued that permit in January for the structure.
And it could be a bonding issue, because when we're looking at, it may be that there's another type of bond that we're not familiar with, because a lot of the bonds that we do see, we have to do it, we have to facilitate it. It's 130%. So with inflation, we could be really in a bind if we're bonding buildings. And I want to be careful with that. So if we're going to look at starting to bond amenities like this, we may need to look at a different percentage on those. Because sidewalks and things that we control are.
So at what phase of construction are you saying you want to be able to put those in? Because the trails, the pavilions, all of that stuff would have to, with trails for sure, there's no reason the basketball court can't be done when we do our final subdivision inspection,
Yeah.
before we start issuing building permits.
That's kind of what the site work related things that don't require infrastructure,
Right.
basketball court. I don't see any reason we want to get in a situation where we're bonding those items.
Yeah.
as long as we say,
I can speak to that. My name's Max Herring. I'm with TerraCore, the developer.
they come up to the microphone if you don't mind.
Like Hunter mentioned, or Larry, I forgot who mentioned it, we are actively installing these amenities now. I mean, we're working on them now. What we're trying to protect ourselves from is getting to that final plat stage where y'all come to do the final site walk, and there may be some exposed areas that don't look cleaned up and buttoned up and finished. And y'all use that, or that is held against us as a reason not to approve the final plat. We are actively working on these. We want these to be completed before the first home in the neighborhood. So it's not like something we're trying to kick the can down the road and do them at a later date or with phase 2 or phase 3. It is our intention to have these completed before the first home is done. We just want to make sure that we're not held up at the final plat stage because certain aspects of these amenities cannot be completed now. The vertical construction of the building without, approved water system, sewer, et
So are we
cetera.
just talking about the restrooms?
And
or
the,
is
the
it-
clubhouses and the
Okay.
pool, the construction of the pool and the clubhouse kind of would go together. All the horizontal improvements we plan to have done at final plat. But we also don't want to get to a point, like I said, where there's some, it's going to look like a construction zone at the amenity site. It's not going to look like a clean, pretty clubhouse with a pool and everything. So we want to make sure that the city is
But the pool-
aware of
but
that
the
and
pool will be
understands
done-
that.
But the pool will be done prior to houses being built, or the CO, you're
Being-
saying?
yes.
Before the CO's being, given for a house that's built.
That would be our goal to, we are moving forward with this construction as we speak.
What we normally do on the final plats is when there's a punch list of a few items that aren't too significant, we'll approve subject to, these items being done. Typically there on the final plat is a list of items being done. And I would think something like that, you could put subject to, swimming pool and all amenities being completed prior to first CO being issued.
Issue a CO.
I would rather that than trying to bind things.
Well, and yeah, I agree. Tracking bonds is a nightmare. But, I don't have an issue unless you have an issue that a requirement that any structures that require a permit, those permits be obtained at the time of final plat. So then we have a pool permit, then we've got permits for the vertical, because when you get that, there's no reason at that point. When you
I
get
agree with that.
get your final plat and you're allowed to release permits, that can be releasing all permits, including, because there's not going to be a permit issued for a playground. There's not going to be a permit issued for a basketball court. That's part of your site work, same with the trail. But the clubhouse, the bathrooms, and pavilions, if you've got frame pavilions that we need to inspect, that will require a permit. So at final plat, require all of those permits be pulled at that time for each of those structures. That way, they're going up at the same time you're starting to go up with the houses.
I think we'd be very open to that. That sounds like a very good solution. I would be a little bit hesitant to tie it to the first CO just because these home builders in these neighborhoods move very quickly. And we wouldn't plan on going vertical on the clubhouses until after final plat, and we have the water system approved and fire access approved and everything.
Then what guarantee do you give us that they're done? And you have to understand, I've been, I know I look like I'm 25, but I'm 57 and I've been on here over 25 years. But I can drive you around if you're, ever have trouble sleeping one night. I can drive you around and show you multiple places where there's supposed to be 16 tennis courts and 3 swimming pools and water slides and everything else, that there are none. So, and I'm just saying, as Art always says, what we do for one, we have to do for the other. So if we don't have anything to tie it to as far as,
What about like the 50th CO or something like that?
No.
I just think,
Well,
don't
this
think
is
that's
the
gonna
whole
fly.
reason that I bring this up is because what happens is you sell these to the citizen, this community, and then it's down the road years and years. And what happens to this development if there's, a crisis and something happens? You get it. It never comes to fruition. This is what was promised, this is what was going to be here, and then it never happens. And that happens a lot. And that's where we want to know that, okay, so we've got now 10 homes built, or say 50 homes built, like you say, and that's it. They stop building and there's no amenities.
Well, in that case, we would be open to the bonding of it. That is something that we would not shy away from, I don't think. That would solve our problem with it, and I feel like that would solve the city's concern about it, because that money would be there to construct it if something did happen.
Well, I love what you said, that your intention is this, that you want to have, that you're working on it right now, and that's how you have it planned out. I think we just need some skin in the game.
I think you could build a clubhouse close
Sure.
to as quick as you could build a regular
So-
house.
Yeah,
One-
these don't sound that elaborate where it would be that hard to build during the time span of the first houses being built.
Before we jump on that one other thought is, you're talking about what other recourse would you have? This is an approved PUD, and therefore, at the end of the day, y'all do have the ability to have zoning violations for them not completing, I would think. I'm looking at Hunter, just trying to think of some other recourse y'all do have. This,
We didn't put it in the PUD, so it would have to go back through for the ordinance
Well,
amendment. if we're gonna put
the amenity-
requirements like that.
So
well,
that's
I'm
kinda
just saying, no, I'm just
our-
saying the amenities are shown in the PUD.
Yeah, but part of
Yeah.
it is, at
the
your
subdivision-
clubhouse is where your CBU is gonna be, correct?
So, yeah, the.
That's gotta be done
That will
before
be
the
complete.
first person
Yeah.
moves
Yeah.
into that subdivision.
Yeah, that part's done. What he was saying is the vertical stuff, the things like you were saying, the things that require permits.
Sure.
As far as the paving, all that asphalt and everything's being done with the roadway construction, so,
I will say this, going back, and it wasn't a subdivision, but the apartment complex, we had the one up by Publix, and now we have another one under construction, and we've got one that has been submitted and we're about to issue for construction. They've all been told they don't move anybody into those units until until the clubhouse and the pools are built. As a matter of fact, the one we are getting ready to issue, that's the very first thing. That was number one on their list, was to get started on that. That may be a little different with an individual home builder, but they're talking about building out 240 units in 18 months. And so that was the very first thing that actually both sites built, they started on the clubhouse and then continued on, and it was finished when they started the phased opening of those apartments. When the first two buildings were ready, all landscaping was in, everything was good going back, and the clubhouse was open and operational for those first tenants that were coming in. And that's how we've handled it in that instance.
So let me ask this question. If we're, it sounds like we're talking about tying it to the first CO in that neighborhood. Would Fairhope be comfortable with us starting vertical prior to final plat on these clubhouses?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be fine. I mean,
We
like I
just
said,
can't
we
CO
don't,
it until the sprinklers
well, yeah,
and
I was
all
gonna
that.
say, we don't have final plat on West right now, correct?
No.
We've already issued a permit.
No,
So
we
I
don't have any-
don't have a problem with that at all.
Okay, and then also, like I said, one thing we just want to make very clear is that at final plat, at the final walkthrough, it's still probably going to look like a construction site at the amenity center. So we don't want that to be held against us and the reason for not approving.
The final plat is pretty subjective. It's not
Yeah.
objective. It's pretty much check the box.
Yeah, and what I'll say there is, I understand there's gonna be some piles of
Pretty
of
objective, excuse my
materials around
Sure.
for vertical construction, but the site's gotta be stabilized.
Yeah.
You can't have mud
That's kinda what
running.
We're not concerned about it not being stabilized, but we're concerned about there being exposed dirt and it being.
In that instance, you're gonna fall back under the erosion sediment control anyway, so I mean.
Well, I mean, we've
as
had
long as
two
you've got
applications.
protections in place and you've got BMPs in place,
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
They're supposed to be seated though, right?
So the problem is actually getting it in time, because we've got two applications. We're going out, I went out yesterday on one that's final plat, we just got submitted, and sediment has covered up the sidewalks and the roads in many places. It was seeded, but not allowed to grow. Once we get final plat, people are building, so then it becomes erosion sediment control on each lot. So
But it
we
also
can
would
do
be-
for the permit on the building.
see, that's
or
what
pool.
yeah, because then it becomes an erosion sediment control
Yes.
ordinance issue
Yes.
with each building permit.
Right.
Like
Not
that-
the
that's-
overall
that's
site
But the
permit.
site needs to be stable.
I guess I'm trying to make is.
Right.
It will not be permanently stabilized at final walkthrough. It will have its.
At the
erosion
amenities.
At the amenity site. The rest of the site will be, but at
Well,
the
and if you have a permit for that amenity site, then you're still gonna have to and the whole reason for seeding is to provide vegetative cover to prevent erosion. If you've got a building permit at that site, then it's no different than a house construction where
Right.
you're putting up
Yeah.
your silt fencing and your BMPs.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And all I'd ask is with that permit for that building, include the BMP plans and how that's phased so that we get the final plat. We know where to look at site stabilization and where it shouldn't be. So if y'all, when y'all carve that out, if you're still working on some areas or have a lay-down yard in one area, then we have,
Yeah, West is already has a permit,
Yeah.
but I can work with Eric to kind of create a construction area for that amenity.
Sure, like-
So that we can
Right.
make sure that we understand when we come for the final plat.
I mean,
of
looking at
subdivision.
that photo, from the sidewalks up, all of that's gonna have to be permitted and under construction anyway, because you've got your pool, you got your clubhouse. But you have to have the paving and the parking done along with the CBU before you can even start receiving permits. That needs to be done immediately. And same as tracking bonds is a nightmare on our end, but holding things up or saying conditionally, we won't issue a CO until this is done is as much a nightmare for us
Yeah.
when we're trying to keep up with all that, especially with everything we got going on. So if we track it with individual building permits for anything vertical that requires a permit, then I would think that would be treated the same as a home site. And we would take care of things in relation to that building permit.
Okay.
well, and like, I want to be clear, so we're all on the same page. We're talking about the vertical and the pool, or is the expectation its final plat for, take this sidewalk, the landscape, the basketball courts, the playgrounds to be in?
I think, with the final plat, we make a motion to approve the final plat subject to
Yeah.
ABC through whatever being done prior to first CO being issued.
Sure. He's asking if.
I'm asking for specifics, because they're going to be looking at,
Yeah,
for,
we had said that the final
I
plat
think the site work, the flat stuff,
should be done.
horizontal stuff should be in place.
is a, and I'm asking specifics, because
Yeah.
everybody needs to know.
Yeah.
Is the playground?
Yeah.
That's not
I
quite
mean-
flat, but it can be done and out of the way.
Yeah, but just as a construction side, that's gonna be real hard to be in there putting pavers in and putting pools in and doing all that when you've got a playground in place and,
It's been done before.
okay.
Firethorn, Oak Meadows Village, all had that in their phrases. So whatever we do here,
You can use the basketball court as a laydown yard.
and I just want some consistency, and I don't think we're necessarily creating a precedent, because they're at least coming to us and asking for clarification on.
Can we
Oh,
get
I
back to
appreciate
this?
that.
I think
Yeah.
if the playground is part of it, I don't think we need to make the construction, phased in a awkward way that's gonna cost them a lot more money if we're not really achieving anything, Lord
Okay.
knows construction costs have gone up enough anyway. As long as we can just say, look, we want all of that done prior to the first CO, I'm pretty comfortable with it if Eric is, and I like the way that Eric's, got the idea of, kind of the storm control.
Help me track it.
Yeah, right.
Help me track it.
That's where it gets tough. But
Yeah.
we'll do that, and
Can we get back to the slide that had the list of all the amenities? For both phases?
For both phases.
No, that was
Yeah,
it.
last slide.
Yeah.
So we're saying community trail, open recreation area. The basketball court might, if it has a cover, it might need a
Let's see what we
permit.
got, yeah.
So pond, open recreation area, community trails.
What's an
Should
open
all
rec-
be,
Go back, I'm sorry.
I'm thinking it's. a
Just
field.
grass
Is
field
that-
area.
It's a fancy word for
That
something.
needs to be
That
done.
are focused in the
Yeah.
club, so the clubhouse area.
You're basically talking about
Everything
that area.
outside of that clubhouse area will be complete.
Okay,
So,
okay.
What-
Sound good?
See you later.
All right. Is that the answers?
Thank you.
That
Y'all
is-
got them? We're all okay.
All right.
Perfect.
Thank
Thank y'all for
Thank you.
bringing that up to
Yes.
us. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Anything else?
That is it.
I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No second, no discussion.